This lesson is about a pleasantly named disease with an unpleasant constellation of symptoms. It's human herpes virus 6, or HHV6, which is the virus responsible for roseola. So, our scene will take place in a field of roses, and the title of the sketch, The Roses of Roseola. Alright, since HHV6 is a member of the herpes virus family, you know already that it's a double-stranded DNA virus whose primary host is the human. It's also occasionally called sixth disease, as it's the sixth disease described in the childhood exanthems. I've always remembered the link between HHV6 and roseola by pronouncing roseola as ro6ola. Anyway, back to our scene. First, as you can tell by our blue theme, HHV6 is a DNA virus. No surprise there. And since almost all DNA viruses are double-stranded, we chose not to illustrate it here. We've only illustrated the exceptions. So up front and center, we'll have a squire who's following his liege that's riding a horse. Additionally, the squire has rosaries in his hand in case the field of roses wasn't enough of a link for roseola. This squire is supposed to represent a CD4 cell, or a helper T cell. A squire helps his knight, like a CD4 helper T cell helps the cytotoxic T cells. See the 4 feathers in his hat and the 4 on his belt? They should reinforce that it's a CD4 cell. So why is CD4 important to remember? Well, HHV6 infects CD4 cells, and the clinical significance of this is that HHV6 infection has the ability to cause immunosuppression by killing off the CD4 cell population. We're going to add another symbol to the horse's flank. It's a tiny symbol, the symbol of Hermes, which was our symbol for herpes. This is to remind you that HHV6 is a herpes virus. Notice how the Hermes symbol has a number 6 on it? You really can't forget it now. Okay, that stuff was all pretty easy. Let's get to the good stuff, the clinical symptoms. Roseola, which is also known as exanthem subitum, is an illness that occurs primarily in children between 6 months to 2 years of age. The illness is characterized by a high fever that lasts for 3 to 4 days, and that's followed by a diffuse macular rash. Sometimes the fever can be so high that it will provoke seizures, and the rash classically has a lacy appearance that spares the face. So most of the questions you'll have about roseola, both on step exams and on the wards, will be differentiating symptoms of roseola from other childhood viral rash-producing illnesses. The key is the timing of the fever in relationship to the rash. So let's drill this home. The fever lasts 4 days. So to represent this, we'll have our squire sweating profusely, and above will be a flag that has 4 suns on it. 4 days of fever. Now the fever of roseola can be really high, often over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is high enough that it can cause febrile seizures. So this is an association we should be on the lookout for. Notice as our squire is peering off into the field of roses, he starts trembling. He's so hot that he's hallucinating and notices an apparition appearing. This is making him tremble with awe, and this trembling should help you remember febrile seizures. Now, finally, the timing of the fever and the rash is one of the really important giveaways for roseola. Again, that's that the fever lasts for 4 days, and then, as the patient defervesces, a rash appears. So let's add this blue fire behind our apparition, which illustrates that the flames have cooled, or the fever has subsided. And then, notice that she's clothed in this fancy pink lace, covering everything but her face. And this represents the diffuse, lacy body rash that spares the face. In her arms, she's cradling a child, and again, this is to remind us that roseola affects children ages 6 months to 2 years. And the last thing you need to know about roseola is that there's no FDA-approved medication to treat the virus. Instead, treatment is supportive with cooling measures and adequate fluids. So really, it's pretty good news for the patient to have roseola versus the potentially deadly measles. And that's all. The key points you'll need to pick up from the question stem will be that the patient has had a high-grade temp over 104, which lasts for 4 days, and most importantly, that after they defervesce, they get a rash that spares the face. Again, this is in contrast to measles, which doesn't spare the face, and they often have fever while they have the rash. Okay, that's all. A nice short one for you.